Yes, it is the Fantasy Pros Best Ball Show with myself, Tom Strachan, and Andrew Erickson, ready with one simple mission for this summer: to build the team that can take down the DraftKings Millie Maker contest and win $2 million. That is right, Andrew. Last year, we might have failed, but this year, we're not dissuaded. We're ready to try again. How's Best Ball Summer treating you so far?
It's been a lot of fun. The weather hasn't quite gotten as hot as I would have hoped, but at the same time, it's keeping me cool, being inside, doing these best ball drafts, and having a lot of fun and trying to. Right now, there's not a lot of player news because a lot of these teams, OTAs are very, very short. So it's kind of just figuring out what strategies you want to go with because we know once and July comes, August starts, players are going to move in up and down, flying up boards because of beat reporter said this, coach speak said this, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Shout out to my guy, Emo Cowboy, dropping a follow on the channel. Make sure you do if you like best ball, because each and every week we will be here drafting these teams on different platforms, as well as talking over a whole host of stuff. So, Andrew, I don't know if you want to jump into the draft and we'll get underway as soon as it fills, but we've got plenty that we can talk about in the meantime, because this is DraftKings flagship contest. 882,000 possible entries, maximum entry of 150 different entries per person, at $20 per entry. That'll set you back $3,000 if you want to max enter this contest. But look, if you're serious about fantasy and if you're serious about winning a lot of money, then it's well worth it, because the top prize, $2 million, second prize, $1 million, third prize, $715,000. Finish inside the top 20 and you are walking away with at least 50,000. The path to get there, it's not easy. Week 1 to 14, 12-team pod for 12 play, the 11 other players who we're going to be drafting against tonight. And then after those 14 weeks, the top 2 teams, they advance. That's going to be us into another pod. 1 of 12 for the next round in week 15, 1 of 12 in week 16. And then in week 17, we arrive in the finals to take on 1,020 other people. It is definitely not an easy task to win big in these best ball contests. But Andrew, you and me, this is what we really enjoy. We've been into a lot of these drafts, so there's plenty that we can feel confident about. And the draft is going to get underway in about a minute and 50. So lots that we'll be doing. Andrew, where are we picking from tonight? Pick 12. Well, that leaves us plenty of time to chat through it.
The content god, that's what we got.
Yeah. Andrew, I don't know if you can zoom out just slightly, or hit the kind of control minus on your keyboard. Just give us a little bit more of a view of the draft board.
Let's see.
Oh boy.
I should be able to figure that out. Give me 1 second. Let's see.
So if you're in the chat and if you are drafting alongside us tonight, do let us know. And let us know how many of these contests you've already drafted on DraftKings. Like I said, me and Andrew, this is our first one together, but we're going to be drafting on a bunch of different platforms: FFPC, Drafters, Underdog, lots coming your way. There we go. That's really nice there.
Perfect.
That kind of makes it a little bit easier on the eye. We've got a minute before this gets underway, and then we'll have a little bit of time before it reaches us. So let's talk about last year's winner. And we've got the winning team, which we can pop up on screen here. It was a 3-6-8-3 build. So that was 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 8 wide receivers, and 3 tight ends. It was the second year in a row that a 3-6-8-3 team won the Millie Maker on DraftKings. It didn't really go overboard with correlation for week 17, which has been a bit of a hot topic over the years, but it had lots of little stacks. It was Carolina, Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Washington, Rams, 49ers. Andrew, have you been paying much attention to the kind of week 17 fixtures so far, or are you still just trying to get used to what those fixtures are and adjusting for them?
I haven't. So if you're asking if I've memorized all the week 17, I have not memorized all the week 17 matchups yet. I do have, Debro did send me last week a little cheat sheet for the best ball playoff schedule. So I pulled that up on my other monitor. So I am prepared and ready to talk about some of these playoff matchups. But I think it's obviously super important because best ball, especially on DraftKings, is not just, drafting the best player because it's not a cumulative scoring format. It is really about, these these week 15, 16, 17, where it's almost season long meets DFS, right? Because it becomes a daily contest in these 15, 16, 17 weeks. And it's really about, okay, what can you do and deliver into this specific week to help me win all the money at the end. So I think that you hit on it. Not overly correlated necessarily, but enough mini stacks where you have to make sure you have a couple games. You can even see the scores here, right? Detroit, San Francisco, 40-34.
Yeah.
Or Houston, 31-2. I mean, we have totals where it's going over 50 points, 60 points. So it really is about hitting on some of these late matchups that blow up, which, again, we don't always know which matchups are going to blow up early in the season. It's usually not games that are played in Cleveland. But I know a couple of years ago that was actually disproven with a wild Browns and Jets game. So you can never be too certain. But at least you can be the dome game. You can feel pretty good about being safe.
Yeah, and one thing that stands out here, the draft percentages, Trey McBride only 6% owned in the final, out of a 1,000-team final. That's huge leverage when your tight end scores 33 points. Bijan Robinson, 6.6% owned, 24 points. And Ricky Pearsall, 30 points from a 7% owned player. That's a massive advantage. So we definitely want to find some gems like that. Are we underway on the clock, Andrew? Is the first round ticking over? Should we spin back over to the draft board and see?
Go to the draft board. Yep, we are on the clock now. So we have the 12th, 13th overall picks. So we have all the receivers available to us. Genty has fallen. We have Brock Bowers available to us. I'm telling you right now, I want Brock Bowers. So let's just lock him in first.
Yeah, sure.
We can build some extra time, and then we can discuss a little bit more. Tom, do you want to go with Genty?
So my lean was going to be Nico Collins and Ashton Genty, but do you think there's value in going with the Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty kind of correlation and just playing it out from there? Or would you rather go Collins?
I would rather go Collins. I think
I'm good with that.
Cool. All right.
I feel annoyed that somebody is getting for second round Ashton Genty at our expense. But look, I'm so high on Brock Bowers. I think the ceiling is exponential for him this year. Last year, he was dealing with poor quarterback play throughout the season, and he still broke all kinds of records. I think that there's definitely positive touchdown regression can happen for Brock Bowers because he was playing in such a poor offense that it just wasn't easy for him to really get to the red zone. The Raiders weren't scoring a whole ton of points, whereas this year there's the potential that they're going to be a better team. They're going to move the ball more often. And with Geno Smith at quarterback, the ceiling is the roof kind of thing. But what is it that makes you so positive about Brock Bowers? Anything that I haven't mentioned?
Well, I think it does come down to where do you want to get your exposure to Brock Bowers when you're drafting in best ball? I know there are other formats where it's half PPR versus full PPR. DraftKings, you have to remember the scoring format. You get bonuses for 100 receiving yards. You get an extra bonus. So touchdowns are less dependent in this specific format, which is what you were talking about, right? What was lacking with Bowers last year? The touchdowns. Okay, well, let's say it's still 4 to 5 touchdowns. He doesn't score a lot. It's mostly Genty, or the Raiders' offense is just kind of mediocre. Well, Bowers could still catch over 100 balls, and this is a full PPR site. And in best ball, we don't have access to the waiver wire. We don't know exactly that Jonnu Smith is going to be the tight end that breaks out, and then we can pick him up off waivers. So I think in this particular format, I like going after a Bowers more so than on a half PPR site like an underdog, where you can get by, I think, a little bit easier going late round tight end with some of these touchdown dependent players. So that's kind of my take on Bowers. I think this is a better format to take him or take a swing on him because we know that he's an elite talent, obviously, what he did as a rookie. And I mean, expecting year 2 growth, I don't think is crazy. And the fact that he has Geno Smith, that's a major quarterback upgrade that should elevate him, at least specifically with the floor. So that's kind of why I felt like Bowers. But again, I wouldn't say not going with Genty there. Genty went right after the Collins pick. And for Collins, I was looking because I couldn't remember. So he is 5th in terms of receiving yards per game the last 2 seasons. If he stays healthy, I think it's another 1,500 yard season, 15 touchdowns, 80, 90 catches. And I mean, I wouldn't knock anybody for picking him in the first round or ranking him as a top 5 wide receiver. And I believe we got him as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, wide receiver 8, 7.
Yeah.
8, yeah. So
love that. And just one more thing we should cover on DraftKings. If you're unfamiliar with the format, you do get the 100-yard bonus for receiving yards or 100 yards for rushing. And last year, you go back and look at how many tight ends put up 100-yard games. Brock Bowers had 5 games over 97 yards. So he came close on like 2 I think it was, and then he was over 100 yards on 3. You get a 3-point bonus on DraftKings. That's a massive amount of points for 100 yards. In terms of other tight ends who were getting close, George Kittle had 4 games over 95 yards. Trey McBride had 3 over 95 yards, but nobody had 5 games over 95 yards like Brock Bowers did. So I very much think that this is a format which he can really crush, and there isn't the addition of Gentry doesn't worry me enough to make me stay away from him. But we're a couple of picks away. Obviously, we started Nico Collins, Brock Bowers. Last year was the year where everyone went 0 RB heavy, but there's not. Now it's kind of come back to the pack. I'm not in on James Cook, who goes just before us. We've got Rashee Rice, Davante Adams, Mike Evans, Jayden Daniels, DJ Moore. I'd be willing to go with Davante Adams as my main pick here. But anyone else standing out to you, Andrew?
No, Davante, we are lockstep. I mean, how high is his ceiling if Puka Nacua misses any games? And I think that he can at least be a top 15 receiver, even if Puka is healthy with Stafford.
Well, why don't we go Stafford? Adams. And then if you're not high on any of these other wide receivers, it feels like the choice then comes down to, is there a reason not to pick Jayden Daniels?
You make a good point. You make a good argument there with Jayden Daniels. I know I'm always a late round quarterback guy, but at the same time, when you can draft someone this high, this elite, again, it is a little bit different in the best ball format where you do want to lock in the top end production when you can. So yeah, let's go with Jayden Daniels, see how we can build this out. And I think too, us avoiding, so we've gone through 4 picks. We haven't drafted a running back yet. And I'm trying to be very conscious of the fact that there are going to be so many great late round running backs to draft this year with this incoming rookie class. And I believe it was Pat Thorman that posted this on X, I think it was a couple weeks ago, talking about how the NFL was getting smarter with waiting to draft running back. So even though we had a lot of day 3 picks, it traditionally hasn't been. Those guys have usually gone much earlier when the NFL was reaching on running backs. So I think that you're kind of getting a discount on some of these day 3 rookie running backs where in past years they would have gone more in round 3, in round 4, where they're going to, I think we're going to see a lot of guys probably play out or over deliver what their draft capital would suggest they do as rookies.
Yeah, and if you're enjoying this best ball conversation and enjoying this best ball draft, I know we've got a few people in the chat with us tonight. Then tune in, subscribe, follow here on Twitch, because we're going to be streaming these all summer long. Myself and Andrew Erickson helping you dominate your best ball drafts, learn about the strategies, stacks, sleepers, so much more. We're going to cover a whole host of topics, and every couple of weeks we'll be in live drafts. In between those, we'll be covering other topics every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern on Twitch at twitch.tv/fantasy pros to get the most practical best ball advice on the web. So you mentioned it, we're kind of falling into a bit of a 0 RB build. And obviously last year, 0 RB was very much the popular thing to be doing because wide receivers were just getting pushed up the board. And that was on the back of, in 2023, 0 RB teams, both here on DraftKings and on Underdog, winning people millions of dollars. One of the articles I've wrote for Fantasy Pros Best Ball Guide, which people should be checking out, I was today looking at 0 RB and how popular it really became. Last year, 21% of people drafting on Underdog were drafting 0 RB teams in Best Ball Mania. That number was twice as much as it was in 2023 when it was 9%. Andrew, if you had to guess, given that last year 0 RB failed horrendously, and I can get into more of the numbers around that, what would you expect that number to be this year? So a little context, in 2021, 4% of drafters were drafted 0 RB, 22, 6%, 23, 9.5, and 2024, 21.12%.
So it's either going to be significantly lower or it's going to be like a little bit higher as they're like, no, we're going to double down on it again. I'll middle it. I'll say it's back down to a more modest 10%.
Yeah, when I was chatting about it earlier in a Discord, I said I reckon about 12% feels right. But because you hinted at this before, like that it's such a good year for 0 RB because of this rookie running back class that's coming in. So it feels like you don't want to fade it. yes, we're still getting, I think we're getting 2 more wide receivers in the top 100 than we were last year, but the spread of them feels better. It feels like you can build a little bit nicer. So we're coming up on the clock in a couple of picks at the back end of round 5. We've got off 3 wide receivers and Brock Bowers so far.
Yeah, I fat fingered the Jayden Daniels pick as I was looking. I'm like, wait, why don't we have Jayden? And of course, it's Rashee Rice, who I am very torn on because of the injury he's coming off of. I'm not so concerned about his suspension, but he's on our team, so we got to make it work and make the picks best with Rashee Rice on them.
So Jaylen Waddle for the next one, or James Conner?
Let's just lock in Jaylen Waddle for right now. I like him as a solid bounce back.
Do you want to go Travion Henderson here, or keep the wide receiver run going, and then we can go running back? We'll go running back in mass volume later.
Yeah, let's push it a little bit. So yeah, I'm gonna go with let's go with Ridley. Does that work?
Yeah. I know we're both kind of in on Calvin Ridley. We've talked on other shows about how we feel like it could be undervalued, and obviously you don't want to always bet on bad teams, and the Titans could still be bad, but I think they'll be good enough, and they're going to move the ball better, and that division is still soft enough that I don't have too many concerns. But yeah, so obviously Rashee Rice, not a player that either of us are particularly high on, but I don't dislike him, and I don't dislike the value too much.
He has. I will not argue with anyone about the ceiling case for Rashee Rice. I think that the ceiling case is pretty evident. I just am very afraid of guys coming off season-ending injuries and then putting them back in their role. Is he going to be firing week 1? Again, to play the hedge card again, I think that in a best ball format where you're having those 15, 16, 17 weeks, Rice might be a bust in redraft because he's not healthy in the beginning of the season. But as he starts to get back, get his legs underneath him, is he firing on all cylinders at the end of the year? That's what we're hoping for. Maybe he doesn't pay off his round 4 ADP, but if he's delivering spike weeks when we need it the most, then he'll end up being a good best ball pick. But again, most of the time, not someone that I'm usually trying to click. But hey, if you're going to draft 150 teams or whatever, you got to get some exposure to a guy with a extremely high ceiling.
Yeah. Well, let's just take a pause from this for a moment and catch up on the chat a little bit. We've got the team out of the 10 spot is also in here in the chat with us, and they said they like the Nico Ladd combination from the 112-2-1. I can understand that one. I'm a little lower on Ladd and Conkey than some people, but I think in this full PPR format, he's definitely very much in play. And then Coltrane Gaming, this is going to take us down a different path entirely, but he says that he's interested in career opportunities within fantasy football. It's his dream job and would love some insight in how to get involved with starting a career at Fantasy Pros. Well, for me, it started 4 years ago, I think it was. I just wanted to get my rankings out there, Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings. I'd emailed them and asked whether I could submit mine to the site. And it just so happened at the time that managing editor Blaine Bonts wanted somebody to do more best ball content. And all of a sudden I found myself writing for the site, and it's kind of gone from there. And I couldn't be any more happy with it. I've written for other sites. I've done lots of shows with great people, but writing for Fantasy Pros is very much one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done. Andrew, yours is a bit more, you do this full time, completely professionally.
Yes.
How did you get to this point?
Yes. Being really lucky, I would say, has a lot to do with it. Being at the right place at the right time. But I would say don't wait for someone to give you an opportunity to create content, to create work. Yeah. There's nothing stopping you from posting your rankings or an article or something that's fantasy football related, a video, a social short. No one's stopping you from doing those things. You can post those on any type of social media platform, and then you build somewhat of a portfolio. So when an opportunity does arise where, hey, Fantasy Pros or a different type of fantasy football company is looking for social media influencers or rankers, things along those lines, you have a portfolio ready to go to show them, hey, like I'm ready, I can do this. So that's how I would start, and always just keep your eye. And again, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help facilitate any type of potential opportunity, and especially if you have like rankings or other content to look at.
Yeah, I should say that's what I had all that. I'd set up my own website, nothing fancy, but it was just somewhere where I could put articles, and that was the stuff which I sent in when I wanted to kind of make a more serious go of it, and it definitely helped me have a good footing in it. So, but by all means, always reach out. The DMs are open, as they say. We are coming to round 7, very back of it. Still no running backs for us. This has been a very pure zero RB build. Aaron Jones at the top of the queue, and then we've got DeAndre Swift, who could be a value or could be another nightmare situation for him. Isaiah Pacheco, who Andy Reid said is in good shape, which was possibly a little bit surprising. And then otherwise, I think we kind of maybe look at the quarterback or tight end situation or wide receiver, because this doesn't feel like a hugely great tier for running backs at the minute.
I would agree with that.
I don't really want to push it. So could you just pull up the running back tab? We've got 25 seconds here. So it's basically DeAndre Swift or pull up Tyrone Tracy, Jaylen Warren, Cam Skattebo, because I think we can afford to double tap running back here if we want to. I'm not too worried about ADP.
You want to take Jordan Mason?
Let's take Jordan Mason as one of them. And then do we want to lock in some volume and bring Najee Harris up? These are quite a big reach, but I'm not sure if we really can push it another round.
I'll push it another round. I think we'll get some running backs to fall.
Who do you want here then? Wide receiver, is it?
I like Jayden Reed. That's probably the guy I would probably go with. Would be Jayden Reed, just another receiver with spike week potential.
Okay, let's go Jayden Reed, and then because now one thing which we've done, we've given ourselves plenty of outs at quarterback to later quarterbacks. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes will be gone by now, but Davante Adams, you're talking Matthew Stafford, who goes later. CJ Stroud goes later this year. You've got Tua, who's going later this year. Cam Ward and Geno Smith. So I think that we can still find a way towards some okay stacks. But I don't think that no matter what kind of falls to us at the next turn, I think we really have to go running back heavy. And I think wide receiver, we can possibly be done for quite a long period.
I would agree. I think the thing that I was thinking about, I think I was in the Fantasy Pros Discord. Someone was asking me about some type of late round strategy. And the strategies that we throw out, everyone's pretty familiar with: late round tight end, late round quarterback, late round running back. There's not really a late round wide receiver strategy because it's just really hard to find actual producers at wide receiver in the later rounds. So that's kind of my mindset here where, yes, we invested everything early in receiver. If you're ever going to do this, this is how you would probably do this strategy because, yes, running back looks bleak right now. But like you outlined, a couple late quarterbacks with some stacking potential. There's a lot of options there, so we can pick up a couple QBs along the way. And then we're just going to take a ton of shots at some of these upside rookie running backs, second-year running backs that, yes, on paper right now, they don't look great, but maybe they can stumble into some more volume down the line. So kind of interested to see how this team shakes out because this is true zero RB team. This is a true zero RB team.
Yeah, and just to put it in perspective, when I said earlier that like zero RB bombed massively last year, when it comes to best ball, we tend to talk about advance rates, advancing from this draft to the next round of the playoffs. Your average advance rate, if two teams move forward, is 16.7%. Last year, zero RB teams were averaging 8% advance rates pretty much across the board or worse, no matter how many running backs you drafted. So we're definitely hoping that trend bounces back in a big way for us this year. And I think there are reasons why it can do. I think you've just got to be willing to take what the draft board is giving you. And hopefully we're going to hit on some of these rookie running backs. You talked about like looking for wide receivers, and I know you've got an excellent article up on the site today about wide receiver breakouts, Andrew. Like, is there anything in particular that you think over the next few rounds would cause you to take a wide receiver from this slot that you really believe could break out? Or do you feel like we've hit enough quality that we shouldn't be worried about that and we have to concentrate elsewhere?
I think we've kind of put all of our eggs in the basket of, hey, we feel really good about the receivers we're drafting. We're not banking on breakout wide receivers. Like, that's not the plan for this team. Our team's not going to win because we hit on a bunch of breakout wide receivers, right? Yeah. Because we've already elected, no, the stud receivers we drafted, those are going to be the guys that are going to help us win our flex every single week. We're going to have 3 receivers and a wide receiver in flex most likely. And this strategy is based on the fact that, hey, we really believe this rookie running back class is going to drastically exceed expectations, especially in the later rounds. So that's kind of where we're making our bet based on what we did earlier in the draft. Again, drafting Brock Bowers, going with elite tight end, and then going with, I'm assuming we're going to draft 3 quarterbacks, but getting some of these pocket passers and even like Justin Fields right now. Like, I know we don't have a Jet, but I think he's a pretty good value for quarterback. We could even potentially double quarterback here.
We've got to go running back, man. Cam Skattebo, I think, has to be one of them. And I think even maybe Zach Charbonnet, who's got standalone value as well. Unless, I know you like Javonte Williams. I'm not in on Javonte Williams, but if you want to go Javonte over Zach Charbonnet, I'll allow it.
All right, so we got Skattebo. Make sure I didn't fat finger that one. So we do have another running back on the team. Thank you for talking me off the ledge, Tom. He's like, Erickson's like, I'm going to draft more quarterbacks. Like, no. This is my first time drafting and driving, guys. Okay, this is new for me. So Javonte, we'll go with
Javonte or Charbonnet.
We'll go with Javonte, this year's J.K. Dobbins. And I think too, with this build, Javonte can just get us through 8 weeks. Just give us some RB2 production. That's a win.
Well, that's it. And obviously we're going to lean probably into several rookies. We've already got Cam Skattebo. Jordan Mason is somebody who could see good usage throughout, but also as the season goes on, maybe his role grows if Aaron Jones breaks down. So if Javonte Williams can come out fresh like he did for the first half of last year, then that can buy us enough time where the other running backs can develop. And if you're enjoying this kind of strategy talk, the 2025 Best Ball Draft Kit is live at fantasypros.com/bestball. Plenty of content from myself and Andrew in there. It has been a joy to write. It's a one-stop shop for rankings, stacks, ADP trends, rookie breakdowns, roster construction strategy, and more. And it also includes exclusive strategy content for Fast Draft, a new Best Ball app where drafts take just 5 minutes and you can win real money. Download Fast Draft and use code FANTASYPROS when signing up to get your first deposit matched up to $50. That's up to 10 drafts for free. Andrew, I know you've been doing lots of drafts on Fast Draft. How do you find the pace of this on DraftKings when you come back to it?
It's definitely different. And maybe you can tell, Tom's trying to steer me right back onto the road as I try to drive off the road. Again, I'm not used to drafting as many quarterbacks because the Flex 4 contest on Fast Draft does not have any quarterbacks, just running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. But yeah, definitely a different change of pace. But I think just making sure you understand every different format and how the contests are all, paid out. What's the prize structure like? It's really important. And I think that I don't want to say it's an edge, but I think it's something that maybe not every drafter is really considering. It's not just the same thing in every single draft room for every single platform. It really is different. And you have to approach each draft as a singular thing and very make sure that you're drafting for that unique perspective and contest.
Yeah, so we got a question here in the chat. How do you guys feel about Drake May? I keep hearing all the drafters like May. Well, you can basically just say if guys got any kind of rushing upside, that I'm going to be in on them. Obviously, I've been burned over the years on guys like Trey Lance. But Andrew, you're a Patriots fan. I know we shouldn't have to convince you too hard when it comes to Drake May.
Yeah, I think that the price is really palatable. He's not someone that's going insanely high. Maybe that changes. But based on the fact that, if Stephon Diggs isn't going to be available, I think there's going to be enough naysayers just based on the environment that his ADP is not going to get out of control. So having that in your back pocket, if in case he doesn't fire, okay, well, he was a late round quarterback, but the upside is so clear with Drake May. When he was healthy last year, he basically threw a touchdown in every single game that he played. The rushing, like you alluded to, he was over 30 rushing yards per game. That's a really important number to hit. There's only a select few of quarterbacks last year that I think it was 7 quarterbacks that hit 30 rushing yards or more. And all of them, except for Drake May and Kyler Murray, of course, because he's just the enigma of anything rushing wise, were all top 6 quarterbacks in terms of fantasy points per drop back. So very efficient, scores fantasy points. Maybe the ceiling isn't there if we can't get the receivers to step up around him. But I also believe Drake May is a talent elevator. I think he's going to get the most out of this group. I like Kyle Williams a lot as well. So hoping that he can have a big impact in year one.
Yeah, I mean, he completed 67% of his passes last year when there wasn't very much quality around him. So I definitely believe that Drake May can take a step. There've been some middling reports from OTAs saying that he struggled a little bit, but we know that we shouldn't necessarily read too much into them. We're back on the clock. Two rookie running backs who you've starred right at the top of ADP, but we could reach down and get Matthew Stafford with one of them and get our first quarterback if you like, Andrew. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah. So I think Tuten would be the running back play here. And
Yep.
then going with Matthew Stafford, I think makes sense just to have
Yep.
our quarterback stack. So let's lock that in. Tom, I wanted to ask you. So again, Jayden Blue is also on the board. I know we talked about him as a potentially overvalued player. We have Javonte on our team. I was thinking, would Jayden Blue entertain you more if you had Javonte already as an option? Like, hey, I can maybe kind of get both Dallas Cowboys running backs, take advantage of his explosiveness, or is it like still no? I don't want to pay. I don't want to overpay for Jayden Blue, basically, regardless.
I think this is it's a really interesting question, and it's something which best ball people have kind of gone back and forth on over the last few years, going back 5 years. People were quite firmly in the mindset you don't want to handcuff your running backs. But we know in a best ball format that you're not talking individual weeks all the time, that sometimes you can be talking about having enough to get by some weeks. And when it comes to DraftKings, like you really can get by at times. Looking at the teams that have won over the years, there was a team 3-4 years ago who had Jordan Love as quarterback when he played one game, I think it was. There's teams who had absolutely nothing burgers from players for a big time. Seth, if you've got the teams from previous years, I think you might have it from like 2021, 2022. So, yeah, these teams here kind of show you. You go back to 2021, good friend Felix, he had a really nice team, but like Damian Williams didn't do a huge amount. Then you go to 2022, and this team was a complete I could never get my head around it. Like it had Jacoby Brissett on there, who barely played that year. Jordan Love, it was a 4 QB team. So I think on DraftKings you can get away with a little bit more, and I'd be potentially willing to take two running backs when, if Jayden Blue pays off as a good pick in fantasy this year, it's coming because over the course of time, Javonte Williams just becomes a nothing more than likely. And I think that's what it takes for Blue to really pay off in a strong way. So on this format, I would. On shorter formats like Underdog, where there's only 18 picks, I don't think that I would. And also on Drafters, where it's cumulative scoring and you don't really want to be taking zeros or low scores. You want to be getting as much of a high floor every single week. But here on DraftKings, I think I'd be open to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's definitely it's probably a situation where there's no, and you kind of alluded to it when you first got the question, there is no exact right one answer because the way these backfields are deployed, it can be very different in terms of, Jayden Blue, I don't think is ever going to take on an RB1 workload. Maybe he does it 1 week where everyone's hurt or whatever, but most of his scoring is probably going to become on explosive plays, which may or may not be related at all to what Javonte does. If he rips off an 80-yard touchdown, it doesn't matter if Javonte was playing or not. So, we are back on the clock here.
So I'd be good with Geno Smith, and then we could leave the quarterback position alone for a little bit longer and taking another running back. Does that make sense to you? Because we've still only got 4 running backs, and we are quite deep into the draft.
Well, we have Geno. Geno and Stafford have the same bye week, so we could also take Cam Ward. We have the Titans. We have Calvin Ridley, so that would give us our third quarterback. We do need another tight end as well.
Let's push tight end a lot more, and let's go. If we're going to double tap up quarterback here and then be done at the position, let's take Cam Ward and then really punt the tight end position, because I mean, obviously Brock Bowers was incredible, and we need Brock Bowers to be incredible week to week because we've taken him with a first round pick. Like the cost of taking him is so much greater, whereas quarterback, that was maybe a bit of an error on my side to lock in Geno so hastily, but I think what we've got, 3 little stacks, sets up really nicely. Obviously, the 300-yard passing bonus for quarterbacks can be really big here. If you hit on a stack with the quarterback going for 300 passing yards, as well as a few touchdowns, as well as one of the receivers going for 100 yards, I think that can be absolutely massive. In terms of a running back position, so we've got Jordan Mason, Skattebo, and then we've got, where were we? We were on the corner. We've got Javonte Williams and Tuten. How many do you think we're going to need to fish ourselves out of trouble here?
A lot more running backs. That's what else we definitely, just more running backs. Hit it with quantity. Yeah. I think we need at least 4 more running backs.
So if we've gone 3 quarterbacks, I think that we might have to sacrifice a tight end spot and end up with a 2 tight end build to get ourselves to the kind of number of running backs that makes sense here. Wide receivers, we've got 6 so far. So maybe we just get to a point where we've got 7 running backs, maybe even 8 running backs, and go a little bit weird. I think that this is definitely going to be one of the more funky team builds compared to typical. I talked at the start about how like 3683 has been this build that has done historically really well on DraftKings, but I don't think that we need to get too tied into that, because like when we were talking about the winners there was a 3-5-10-2, there was a 4-6-7-3, and then of course 3-6-8-3s. So if we need to go to kind of like 7 running backs, maybe even 8 running backs, we can possibly get ourselves out of jail. And when I looked back at previous winners over the years, there was all sorts of weird builds where you'd see more running backs than wide receivers, which is something that in theory would have paid off massively last year, but not a lot of people were doing it. So yeah, I think it's a classic case of we've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and maybe that's what helps us win big.
I mean, all I can say, Tom, is all the teams I felt really great about, they never won me $1 million. So I mean, if anything, it's a good way to experiment different strategies, just get an idea of when you do this is what you're looking at. And if we come away where, we pushed it too far, not something that we would do in the future, we are back on the clock here looking at running backs. Will Shipley is basically an auto pick for me, because I'm just, I mean, Saquon Barkley's on Madden, guys. Like, I don't know what else we need to be convinced here.
So then, do you want to go Dylan Sampson or Roschon Johnson? Would be the 2 that stand out for me. I'm a little bit cooler on J.K. Dobbins.
Lloyd or Hunter, maybe, as the Rams. We have a little bit of Rams stack.
I think we can push that. Like the ADP, maybe somewhere around that will come back to us. We've got 8 seconds. Roschon, J.K. Dylan. Okay, sweet. Yeah, I think because we kind of reached up to get our first quarterback, and we've made a couple of reaches at running back. I think I'd rather try and scoop some value, maybe to get us back out of jail a little bit, if that makes sense.
Breaking us out of jail, Tom. That's why you're on the show, man. Like, because I'm the one that's like doing all these illegal things, getting us in trouble, speeding, driving off the road to draft more quarterbacks. So I appreciate you trying to wrangle me here on this this early June best ball draft. This is the first DraftKings. This is the first live draft we've done on Twitch.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Thanks, guys, for if you're watching on Twitch, thanks for tuning in. This is awesome.
Yeah, we've definitely had some good amount of chat in the chat tonight. And if you've got questions, drop them in there. Myself and Andrew will always be happy to answer them, whether it's about best ball, roster construction, players that we like, players that we don't like. We did a show with Worm last week where we talked about overvalued players that we didn't want to draft. There were some comments on YouTube some people who really liked a lot of our takes, and some who particularly were a little bit upset with your take around a certain Lions wide receiver, Andrew.
I did have, I was looking at the comments too, and rightfully so. A lot of people came to Amon-Ra St. Brown's defense. Totally get it. But then a lot of people also said, hey, Erickson made some valid points here. And that's all I'm looking. I'm not saying that I'm going to be 100% right. I'm just here to deliver some, conversation starters. And I'm glad it got the chat going, because I think that it got a lot of people thinking about different things. So, that's it. We're here. Content. It's going to be a lot of fun all summer long. We'll be here.
Yeah. Dylan Sampson is a sleeper. Mickey D says in the chat. I like that shout. I think Dylan Sampson's somebody that if he hadn't have gone where he went and then ended up immediately blocked by another rookie, he would have been somebody we talked about as having enough juice to get by veterans. So very much interested in him, and generally okay with sprinkling in the Browns running backs as a duo. How many picks we got to win next back on the clock? Okay, so we got a little bit of time.
Yeah, we got a couple. We're like 5 picks away. 4 or 5 picks away. I mean, I see a couple running backs. Samson just went. I still see a couple running backs. Hunter's still there. Corum's there. I think that should take a Rams running back if one of them is there. I think that probably makes sense. We already have a couple Rams guys anyway. So kind of building into that. Is there a certain tight end you'd want to gravitate towards as our second one? We have
so we don't want Terrence Ferguson, do we? Because of the Brock Bowers bye week. So then we'd be in a 3 tight end build. Could you just tab over to the tight end build? I know we're back on the clock.
All right, so not Ferguson, but yeah, we're back on the clock.
Yeah,
we got nuked in our queue of running back. Oh, we got Corum still already, so he's up there.
We go Corum. I don't mind Devin Neal and J.K. Dobbins falling. I'd be okay with any of those 3. I'll let you make that pick, and then I'll. All
right, we'll do Blake. So Blake Corum's in the queue.
So
we'll grab Blake Corum.
Okay, so now we're at 7 running backs. Is there anybody that you think you would like at tight end more than Theo Johnson?
If Chico Conquo's gone, then no.
So. Yeah, Chico Conquo's gone.
Yeah, so we don't need to do tight end.
Okay, let's go Devin Neal or J.K. Dobbins, either of them, and then I think we can wide receiver and tight end way out. We're going to run out of time.
Let's get J.K. Dobbins in there.
Okay, so that's an 8 running back room now at this point. That feels like we've done as much as we can to repair the fact that we ignored it so much at the top of the draft. If you could just tab over the draft board, I'll recap our team at this point as we stand. So we started with Brock Bowers, went Nico Collins, Davante Adams, Rashee Rice, Jaylen Waddle, Calvin Ridley in a pure 0 RB start. Then pulled Jordan Mason up the board a bit, went back to Jayden Reed just to get that last wide receiver fix. Skattebo, Javonte Williams, Bhayshul, Tuten, hit a triple dip on quarterbacks for Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith, Cam Ward, all stacked with at least one player at this point. Will Shipley, Roschon Johnson, Blake Corum, J.K. Dobbins. So we've been playing the draft board in trends. We've got 2 picks left to go, and we'll want a tight end and maybe another wide receiver, do you think? Is there any kind of late round wide receivers that you've been loving?
Yeah, so let's focus on the tight end first. Let's figure that out. Let's figure out who we're gonna get or who we want to pinpoint. So Bowers bye week is week 8.
Week 8.
Okay, cool. So no Ferguson, no Arroyo. Harold Fannin, rookie tight end. I think he's kind of interesting as just a again.
Can I bring Tyler Conklin to the table?
Yes. I'm open for that. Conk Daddy Summer, always open for that. And
Luke Musgrave is kind of okay as well. I think that he's a bit undervalued. Noah Gray, even Cole Kmet, I don't hate at this price.
Yeah, this late. I like Conklin. I'm trying to see. So our quarterbacks, so we have Stafford. I'm trying to see if there's a pairing we can get. Mayer's probably not. I mean, no. We're not doing double Raiders tight end.
Conklin would give us a little bit of week 17 correlation with Nico Collins. So, maybe Conklin's not even on the team, but I don't dislike that. I wouldn't mind Noah Fant. Maybe he gets traded, but if he stayed on the Seahawks, his week 8 bye week would be problematic for us. So let's not do that.
I'll throw Musgrave in there too. So we'll work with these 3 tight ends for right now, just as placeholders, and we'll take who's available. I think we can go running back or wide receiver. I don't think it matters. So I guess we can just kind of see if there's anyone that you particularly like that calls out to you.
I think I'd probably lean towards wide receiver. I think there's nobody really at running back.
I do like Kyle Monangai. I do like him a decent bit.
Would you check him in the queue, and just in case if we don't find anyone at wide receiver worth our time.
Ooh.
So,
Tutu Atwell might be a good pick. I mean, this late, he might be a good pick.
I've been clicking a lot of Tutu Atwell, and I've been drafting a lot on drafters, and I've been pulling him up 20 spots ahead of ADP at times just to make sure I stack him with Matthew Stafford. So is the drafter in front of us going to do it? No, we're back on the clock.
Okay.
Tutu Atwell for sure. And then should we go Tyler Conklin, or do you prefer Harold Fannin?
Our season's going to depend on if Brock Bowers hits or not. So this is probably the most irrelevant pick that we could possibly make. But if we have to bank on, okay, who could break out week 17, it's probably more likely to be Harold Fannin than Tyler Conklin, I think. So
I think that's a fair way to look at it. Yeah, I mean my mindset was more Steelers at Browns or Chargers versus Texans.
You convinced me just based on the matchup. Tyler Conklin it is.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, did we get him? Did I
Yeah.
not? No, I fat fingered it again. Harold Fannin. Oh man, so this is going to come back. We're going to be resurfacing this. Week 17 is going to come up. Tyler Conklin's going to catch 4 touchdowns from Justin Herbert in the dome. Oh God, this is why I can't drive, Tom.
Well, for anyone who doesn't know, DraftKings pulled all support from the UK this year, so Andrew is left with no choice but to run the drafts. So, hey, these things happen. Premature selection. But let's go back to the top of the draft, and I'll recap this team. And then if anybody in the chat has got any questions about their teams or anything else before we get out of here, we'll get to them. So we finished up with a 3-8-7-2, definitely a more individual build than is common. Brock Bowers, Nico Collins, Davante Adams, Rashee Rice, Jaylen Waddle, Calvin Ridley, Jordan Mason, Jayden Reed, Skattebo, Javonte Williams, Tuten, Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith, Cam Ward, Will Shipley, Roschon Johnson, Blake Corum, J.K. Dobbins, who fell massively, Tutu Atwell to give us that triple stack with the Rams, and then not Tyler Conklin, but Harold Fannin right at the end. And let's bank on that week 17 breakout that takes us all the way to the $2 million. Andrew, how do you feel about this draft?
Definitely not the direction I thought we were going to go in. I am usually a hero RB drafter. That's kind of what I like doing. So I'm okay with punting running back for the most part, but I usually like locking in one guy. Teams like this are always going to look after the fact not so great because you're investing so much into one or two positions. And the fact that we're really strong at tight end, really strong at wide receiver, but it's not just running back that we kind of punted off. Our quarterbacks also aren't the greatest in terms of what they can do individually. Stafford, Geno, Cam Ward. I mean, there's a chance that none of those guys are top 10 quarterbacks. Now, between all three, we only need one guy to kind of have a spike week here and there for it to work for us. So it's not impossible. Is this the best team I've ever drafted? Probably not. But this is the first go around. So yeah, I would not give this team an A, or probably give this team like a C- if I'm being totally honest, especially with my fat fingers consistently making mistakes. To your point, you wanted to draft Jayden Daniels, so
do you think this team would have been looked massively better? Like if you just scroll up a bit to where we would have taken Jayden Daniels and instead went with Rashee Rice, do you think this team would look dramatically better if we'd gone Jayden Daniels at that spot?
I think so, because the fact that we have Waddle and Ridley and Jayden Reed, can those guys put together a production similar to a Rashee Rice? I think Reed has a good weekly ceiling. We saw that at times last year. I think Waddle has a really high weekly ceiling. Ridley, I think, is more steady Eddie, where he's getting us production every single week where we can feel good about him hitting our lineup, not as boom or bust just because he's the projected number one on the Titans. So, yeah, I think the team would probably look a lot better with Daniels. And the thing that bothers me, I think, too, about the quarterbacks is we don't have a lot of rushing juice with any of those guys. Yeah. So we could get, again, let's say this team makes it into, we advance. I mean, if one of these rushing quarterbacks has a 45-point game, it's going to be really hard for our guys. Again, the fact that there's a 300-yard bonus, that does help us a little bit here. So if you are going to go with a pocket passing approach, this would be the format to do it. So again, trying to make the case for our team. It's definitely not perfect, but this is what a zero RB team looks like. So if you feel like drafting a zero RB team, but you don't like the look of this, then You probably shouldn't be drafting a 0 RB team. You should do something else.
Yeah, definitely. We got a question in the chat from the team out of a 10 spot. Am I reaching too high on Travis Hunter? Want a few of Trevor BTJ Hunter teams from the 110. I don't think you're reaching too high at all. I think 4th round Travis Hunter is completely fine. And I think for the reasons that you laid out, if you're already cooking with Brian Thomas, then pulling Travis Hunter up slightly is completely fine so that you can prioritize that stack. Having those two players probably allows you to push Trevor Lawrence at times because you've got Trevor Lawrence's main weapons and he's going to be less appealing to other drafters. Of course, DraftKings can get a little bit rogue and people will pull quarterbacks and draft them without a stack for no reason. But I just think, like we did, once you reach on a player like we did with Jordan Mason, you just have to be willing to offset that value a little bit. And we were lucky that we scooped up J.K. Dobbins sizably past ADP, and we found other points where we kind of recuperated a bit from it. Andrew, I think I'm a little bit higher on Travis Hunter than yourself. Were you okay with him at the 403 there?
I think that's probably a fair price. Look, Hunter to me is he's a unicorn, right? I don't think anyone confidently knows exactly how this season's going to shake out because we always talk about range of outcomes, right? Travis Hunter has arguably the biggest range of outcomes of any player because we don't even know if he's even going to play offense to a certain extent. Will he play defense at certain points during the season? How does that impact what he does on the offensive side of the ball? But at the same time, he's drafted 2nd overall. If you're just drafting blindly based on draft capital, then yeah, he's definitely worth the upside play in the 4th round. I think that's more than manageable. I remember some of the days where we were drafting, I think Chris Hogan at one point was a 4th round pick. So there have been much worse 4th round picks than Travis Hunter Jr. as a 4th round pick. So I'm not going to knock anybody against it. I think it's just going to be a really fun player to see how things kind of shake out. Again, I'm still always on the Brian Thomas Jr. is wide receiver 1 season kind of bandwagon, but we've seen offenses with Liam Cohen before. They can be very concentrated, especially coming from the Rams, where very concentrated around a couple guys. I did want to get your opinion, Tom, though, because there was another team in this draft that also did a bit of a 0 RB. It's the team that drafted from I believe is the 101 spot. So they didn't draft a running back until Tony Pollard at the 6-12. So basically, essentially the 7th round, similar to what we did. Again, we were picking at the end of the 7th round. And then they drafted Tracy, Trey Benson, Kareem Hunt, Marshawn Lloyd, and Devin Neal. I mean, that's not a lot of running back firepower. That is very light.
So where I think I would have changed things there is, okay, you've got 2 quarterback picks in your first 8, but then taking Russell Wilson later, was it further down? Now, obviously, you've got Russell Wilson stacked with Tyrone Tracy, and it's like, was there anyone else from the Giants on there I didn't see? No, I mean, it's whereas you've got Lamar stacked with Zay Flowers, you've got Bo Nix stacked with Cortland Sutton. I'm not sure that I would have bothered with Roman Wilson unless there's a bye week issue. But I don't think the Broncos and Ravens share the same bye week. So it feels like that pick was one which I would have turned into a running back one and really try to mitigate it there. Because if Lamar and Bo Nix aren't hitting often enough to outscore Russell Wilson, it's going to be a little problematic.
Yeah, that is a very interesting pick, especially because he or she also double stacked Lamar because they also got Bateman as well. Yeah, that is interesting. And the fact that they did Bo Nix and Lamar Jackson, you think you get Lamar, he's an elite quarterback. Bo Nix is not in the elite tier, but he's kind of that next tier in that middle range. You could probably have maybe middled it a little bit more and taken someone maybe later than Bo Nix, but not really I don't want to say waste the pick, but manage to take a pick with Russell Wilson. But considering, how many running backs do they even have? I mean, at least we drafted a lot to make up for the lack of investment. So they had 1. So yeah, let's go to the top here. So they had 6 running backs. So we had 8.
Yeah. 6 running backs feels a little too light there. I mean, 3-6-8-3, we talked about it. It's a good build. It's done historically well on the platform, but I just don't think that is the way I would have allocated my draft capital personally. But as we know, there are a lot of different ways to build in best ball. There's a lot of different ways that you can win year to year, depending on what the ADP is giving you. And if you want more of our thoughts on that, remember you can check out the 2025 Fantasy Pros Best Ball Draft Kit. It's live at fantasypros.com/best ball. Myself and Andrew, we're going to be here every week, 4 p.m. Eastern, whether we're drafting, whether we're talking about just different topics to do with best ball. We'll be here. We'll be on the mission to finally win it big in best ball. And we hope you will join us here, whether it's on Twitch, YouTube, listening on audio. Remember, leave us your comments. Let us know where you want to draft with us, and we will make that happen. Appreciate you all hanging out, and we will be back very soon.